When you think about Sweden, most people imagine quiet, snowy streets, clean design, maybe IKEA furniture or ABBA music, but almost no one thinks about one of the most advanced defense industries in the world. And honestly, maybe that needs to change, because right now, something big is happening. Inside Saab's factories, production is moving faster than ever. Orders are pouring in at record levels, and it's not just about fighter jets like the Gripen. Saab is building a full ecosystem: missiles, advanced radar systems, surveillance tech, even naval platforms. That's something only a handful of countries on Earth can truly do on their own. And according to Saab's CEO, Mikael Johansson, the scale of this growth is massive. He says the company has increased its output 4 to 5 times compared to before the Ukraine war. Just think about that for a second. That's not normal growth. That's a complete shift in momentum. And for a country with only around 10 million people, it's even more impressive. But here's the bigger picture. This isn't just about Sweden. Across Europe, defense companies are seeing the same surge. Giants like Rheinmetall and Leonardo are reporting record-breaking years. What started as emergency support for Ukraine has now turned into something much larger, a long-term transformation of how Europe thinks about its own security. And that shift is being pushed from multiple directions. In the United States, political pressure is growing for NATO allies to spend more on their own defense. Leaders are making it clear Europe can't rely on America the same way it used to. And voices like former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen are saying it openly. The old model is over. For years, Europe depended on cheap energy from Russia, cheap manufacturing from China, and security provided by the US. But that world doesn't exist anymore. Now, Europe is waking up to a new reality, one where it has to stand on its own feet, build its own strength, and take control of its own security. And right at the center of that shift is Sweden. Before we go deeper, take a second to like the video and subscribe. More than 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. Now the message coming out of Europe is changing, and it's not quiet anymore. It's urgent, even dramatic. Leaders are saying it clearly. We can't depend on others anymore. Europe has to stand on its own feet. It has to shift gears, fast. The goal? Nothing less than turning Europe into a true defense superpower. But here's the reality, and it's not as simple as it sounds. According to economist Jacob Kierkegaard, not all of Europe is moving at the same speed. Yes, people say Europe is rearming, but in truth, only a few countries are really pushing forward. Germany is leading the charge, Poland right behind it, and then smaller nations, especially in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, quietly building strength. Why them? Because they can afford it. These countries still have the financial power to invest in both security and their economy at the same time. But others, big names like France, Italy, Spain, even the UK, they face a tougher choice. For them, it's not do both, it's choose one. And that hesitation is slowing the bigger European response. But here's where things get interesting. Because defense is no longer just about security, it's becoming an economic engine. The European Union now wants half of all defense purchases to come from inside Europe by 2030. Think about that shift. After the Ukraine war began, that number was only around 25%. This isn't a small adjustment, it's a complete strategic reset. But there's one big problem: production. You can't build a defense superpower without factories, engineers, supply chains, real industrial strength. And this is exactly where Sweden stands apart. While many countries reduced or even dismantled their defense industries over the years, Sweden did something different. It stayed ready. For decades, Saab kept building, kept investing, kept innovating, even when demand was low. That continuity, that discipline, is now paying off in a big way. And the reason goes deeper than business. Saab's leadership points to something rare, a long-term mindset backed by strong ownership. The Wallenberg family, a major force behind the company, didn't think in short-term profits. They thought in decades, in national security, in survival. So instead of shutting things down during quiet years, Saab kept reinvesting, putting money back into research, into development, into future technology. Even when governments didn't fully fund everything, they kept pushing forward. And now, in this new era where demand is exploding and Europe is waking up, Sweden isn't trying to catch up. It's already there, ready, built, and moving faster than most.
There's something different about Sweden, and Saab says it openly. They don't just sit back and wait for governments to fund everything. They've built a system where they keep moving forward, even when support is limited. And that mindset has made them unique, because while others slowed down or paused during quiet years, Sweden kept building, kept investing, kept preparing for a moment exactly like this. And then that moment arrived. Russia's invasion of Ukraine didn't just shake Europe, it changed everything. It was a wake-up call. And for Sweden, it triggered one of the biggest strategic shifts in its modern history, joining NATO in 2024. Now, pause for a second and think about what that really means. Before NATO, Saab was somewhat on the outside looking in. They didn't fully see the internal planning, the future capability needs, or the big acquisition decisions being made inside the alliance. But now, everything has changed. Suddenly, Saab is inside the room. They're part of NATO's major procurement system. They're working directly with organizations like the NATO Support and Procurement Agency. They have framework contracts. They understand what NATO needs today and what it will need tomorrow. This is not a small upgrade. This is a complete transformation. And with that transformation comes something even more powerful: trust. Sweden is no longer just a strong, independent player. It's now part of the alliance, a country that can be relied upon in the long term, and that trust extends directly to Saab. When NATO looks for partners, Saab is no longer an outsider, it's a core contributor, a builder of future capability. But here's the other side of the story, and it's just as intense. Opportunity always brings pressure, because now Saab isn't just competing, it has to deliver at scale. Faster production, bigger output, more advanced technology, and that requires serious investment. According to Saab, they are now investing up to 5 times more into expanding their production capacity than they did before the war. Think about that, 5 times more factories, more engineers, more systems coming online. That's not just growth, that's acceleration at full speed. And through all of this, they're trying to balance something incredibly difficult, expanding rapidly while still managing their finances smartly, keeping operations efficient, and staying ahead in technology. It's a high-stakes game. But right now, Sweden and Saab are not just keeping up with the new defense era, they are helping shape it. And if you're finding this breakdown valuable, take a second, hit that like button and subscribe, because more viewers are watching without subscribing, and your support helps bring you deeper, high-impact analysis like this. Right now, Saab is walking a very fine line, and it's doing it with confidence. On one side, they are pouring massive amounts of money into research and development, pushing new technologies, building the future of warfare. But on the other side, they're staying financially strong, and that balance is not easy. The company itself says it clearly. They don't want to act like a bank. They need steady contracts, continuous cash flow, and smart agreements where customers are willing to pay in advance. That way, Saab can keep building fast without putting itself under financial pressure. And so far, it's working. The balance sheet is solid, the momentum is real, but there's still negotiation happening behind the scenes with governments, because scaling this fast requires long-term commitment. Now here's where the story takes a dramatic turn, because just a few years ago, the biggest challenge wasn't production, it was perception. Believe it or not, there was a time when investors, especially in Europe, were actually hesitant to invest in defense companies. There were debates in Brussels about whether defense was even a sustainable industry. Think about that for a second. At the same time politicians were warning about rising threats, investors were questioning whether supporting defense companies was acceptable. It was a strange moment, almost disconnected from reality. And then, the war in Ukraine changed everything. Almost overnight, that hesitation disappeared. The world woke up. Governments realized they needed strength. Investors realized defense wasn't just necessary, it was critical. And you can see that shift clearly in Saab's numbers. Before the war, the company had around 45,000 shareholders. Today, that number has exploded to around 300,000. That's not just growth, that's a complete transformation in how people see defense, from something controversial to something essential. And it's not just private investors stepping in. The Swedish government is fully behind this push. Massive public spending is now flowing into the economy, with defense taking a major share. In fact, Sweden is now among the top countries in the European Union when it comes to public investment as a percentage of GDP. That means factories are expanding, technology is advancing, and the entire industrial base is getting stronger. So what you're seeing right now is something bigger than just one company growing. This is a full-scale shift, financial, political, and strategic, all moving in the same direction. Sweden isn't just reacting to the new world, it's positioning itself right at the center of it. Right now, Sweden is standing at a turning point, and they know it. This isn't just about building weapons anymore. This is about reshaping an entire economy. The government is looking at a powerful question. How do we turn defense growth into something bigger? Because when you double defense spending, and that's exactly what Sweden is doing, it doesn't just affect the military, it changes jobs, industries, innovation, the future itself. New factories need workers, engineers are in demand, technology is evolving faster than ever. And Sweden is trying to do this the smart way, creating synergy between defense, innovation, and the wider economy. Making sure that this growth doesn't just stay inside military walls, but spreads into civilian technology, research, and long-term industrial strength. And here's the key advantage. Much of what Sweden is investing in will be built locally, or at least within Europe. That means the money stays inside the system, fueling jobs, boosting industries, and strengthening independence at the same time. But the story isn't perfect, because while Sweden is moving fast, not everyone in Europe is keeping up. Major financial institutions, the ones you would expect to lead, are still holding back. Organizations like the European Investment Bank have talked about doing more, but in reality, their direct funding into defense has remained very limited, even years into the war. The same goes for large pension funds and traditional banks. There's hesitation, slow decision-making, what experts call institutional inertia. In simple words, they're moving too slowly for a world that's changing too fast. And that hesitation, many see it as a mistake, a missed opportunity at a critical moment.
But here's the twist. Despite that slowdown from traditional institutions, money is still flowing. Private investors, venture capital, new funding sources, they're stepping in, and they're moving quickly. Defense companies are rising in value. Investment is increasing. Innovation is accelerating. So even without full support from the old financial system, the industry is pushing forward anyway. And this is exactly why Sweden is punching above its weight. It prepared early. It kept its industry alive. It has strong investor backing. And most importantly, it recognized the urgency before many others did. While some are still debating, Sweden is already building, already scaling, already leading. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because the next few years won't just decide who has the strongest military, they will decide who controls the future of defense technology. If you found this deep dive valuable, take a second, hit that like button, and subscribe, because your support helps bring more powerful, high-impact analysis like this to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.